Hello and welcome back, everyone. I thought we were done with this run, but a lot of people have commented that this is a run that they are really enjoying and it has been their favorite for some time. So I think we're going to continue it. I think we kind of did punctuate quite strongly last episode that the crux of the issue is lack of demand in the markets for goods, really causing us to stall out. And part of this is due to development, and part of it, to some extent, is going to be due to our estates not making enough money. It's mainly due to development. And if you see here, pops need to live in a location with development above 20 to demand it. This is something we've had our eye on in between recording last episode and this one. It's maybe been around a week, and this has been something we've kind of taken a look at a little bit closer. For example, in order to demand books as pops, they need to be above 30 development. And so this is going to inform our play in a couple of ways. One, we have been pushing development just relatively constantly because we knew that this was an issue. But also, we could push production more in these places that are over 20 development, right? We don't need to just push up the development. We could also push the pops up in the locations that have the development. So any place that has reasonable amount of building levels, we're probably going to look to aggressively add buildings, not because we think that these buildings will necessarily be super profitable. And, to some extent, we are going to need some more money here because we just put down a whole bunch of market villages to help with development, because the potential burgers will give burgers with literacy, which will increase development. But we'll be trying to increase pops in areas where we do have high development, places that are bright spots. But also we have a lot of stuff coming up on the horizon. By a lot of stuff, I mean a lot of locations that don't have 20 dev, that have a decent amount of pops, that are going to move up to 20 dev, and all the pops in these locations are going to start demanding some of this other stuff. Also coming on up is something that we have been pushing, which is pushing back to Spiritualist, because this is going to give us possible clerics. The clerics, relative to the peasants, are going to demand a lot of goods. So if we take a look and we look at our estates, and we can look at the clerics, we could see that the monthly expenses for our clerics, 30. We could see they are demanding, hey, fine cloth. And not only this, we can also see that they are demanding 30 ducats worth of stuff with 75,000 clerics. With 5.5 million commoners, only demanding 114 worth of stuff. So promoting anyone from a cleric to a commoner is going to make them demand an enormous amount more goods. It's going to stimulate the economy. It's going to cost more food, though, too. So we are going to have to balance this and spin things up. And so we're expecting to add as many buildings as we can, focusing on these 20 development plus provinces. And to some extent, this province is going to start to pop off a lot, right? Because, it may not have a lot of population, but we have a lot of locations with this development. So how can we get more population so that we can get more promotion? Well, we can build slave centers, and I think this is something that we're going to make a point of. We're going to be adding slave centers in every location that we can that's over 30 dev, like 100% of locations if it's over 30 dev, and a lot of locations that are over 20 dev. The reason being is, as we raid for slaves, let's say fighting India, they'll come into these locations that have higher pops, or they come to the locations when we raid for slaves, they'll come into locations that have higher dev. This higher, just numerical amount of pops here is going to give us more potential promotions because, for example, coming to our values, we see plutocracy. We have 100 plutocracy. This is going to give us 100 devs or 100 possible burgers per 1k population. It doesn't matter if these populations are slaves. So if we raid for 5k slaves, this is going to give us 500 potential burgers. And if we specifically put all of our slave centers in locations that have 30 plus development, for example, this is mean we're going to get 500 burgers in a location where the burgers are going to be eating more goods. And taking a look at what exactly pops are consuming is a little bit tedious in terms of the UI. You have to come into here, and then I think that we have to hover, we have to hover specifically their name, and then we can hover their pop needs, and we can see what they're eating, and then we can see that, hey, this is what's going on, and this is where the demand is created and this type of thing. And so we can get more pops, and we can get more upgraded pops in key locations through this that we have facilitated over the course of the round, while we still desperately try and push other places up over 20 development so that we can unlock the pops in those locations, and also kind of coax up these really low locations. But there's a huge difference, a huge difference, and we mentioned this kind of in the outro last time, between starting with 10 or 15 development and starting with 5, which almost all of our locations have started with 5, in that you are like double or triple the distance from 20 development, where most of the premium demand kicks in a completely black and white way. If we take a look at like Amber, no, that's not one of the premium demands. But almost all of the premium goods, when they start getting demanded by pops, are going to be demanded by location with 20 development. And so if you're 5 dev, you have to go 15. If you're 10 dev, you only have to go 10. And if you're 15 dev, you only have to go 5, right? But this also, we have 120% income versus expenses. I think the highest one is 150%. And if we take a look at the nobles, their income, in terms of how much they are getting after taxes, is 242, and then their expenses is 220, but this is after taxes, so I think that we're in the clear here. And we checked all of our estates. None of our estates are underwater. They're all making decent money when we checked, and so I don't think we have to worry about that. But there is maybe perhaps a world where if we were taxing them too much, we might even decrease the taxes to stimulate demand. I don't think that we need to worry about that, because our income after taxes is this, so that implies that our income before taxes is like in the 400s, and so we should be across the line on the ratios, but this is something that we want to keep an eye on. I think we did want intentionally to be not max taxed. Max taxed may be okay, but this is where we're at. So we do not have much of a monthly literacy modifier. We have 0.02. And remember, the literacy is important because the literacy of the burgers, which is giving us like up to 20% increased development growth in locations, or not quite that much, but it's giving us some. And so we are going to be going for the monthly literacy here on the figure for the invite. We have a couple other choices, not really going to push the needle. We're going to go for the monthly literacy here. Another thing is we are also going to approach the prospect of getting more pops from, of course, the pop growth perspective as well. And so we have been, trying to push granaries up a little bit, but we're going to have a renewed interest in trying to push up these granaries, but also villages, specifically farming villages, will also give local food capacity. For if you manage to have a decade of, I think it's a decade of food capacity, this will increase your population growth by good old 0.3, which is quite a lot. And so if we take a look at our pop growth here, we may have a decent amount of food capacity. We have 0.55 on the pop growth, and as we take more slaves, the slaves will count for pop growth, and we see large food storage in province. This is related to that, but it's going to be more important to keep it pushed up around here. Their maintenance is going to be masonry only, which is not too big a deal, and so we should be able to manage that, and we're going to try and push these a little bit more aggressively if we can. Alright, so this feels a little bit bad, but we're going to be taking the plunge here. This location here, it has 20 dev. It also is a rice location, and it's on a river, so our thinking was that we would use it as a breadbasket location, but we are instead going to urbanize it. The reason being is by urbanizing it, we will get access to higher tier pops. These higher tier pops will be in a 20 dev location, so they will have more demand. And okay, we have our farming village already set up, and we have irrigation, and we have this windmill. We have a bunch of things that are aligned to give us a really, really nice percentage modifier for food productivity. Oh well. We're going to build a slave center here as well, and then we will be able to expand out the rice. We'll be able to get the irrigation. We'll be able to get a solid amount of food here, and I really don't think that this market's going to want for food, because we have a few rice tiles, and not many of them have the river. That is a bit unfortunate, but we could still make farming villages in these other ones as well. But the critical idea here is this is going to be devved up. We are going to be able to put a slave center. We're going to be able to pull slaves here, and they are going to be able to upgrade a ton of pops to having higher tier demand. And that's kind of the only thing that has, or overall, it's not really high demand market. It is kind of nice that we have these guys on the back end who have been deving province for forever. But this is 20 dev. We're upgrading it. We're going to put a slave center down, so it's going to pull slaves to a 20 dev location. So that 20 dev, kind of strip, a lot of these places are now 20 dev, or they're really, really close to 20 dev. They're going to get there on their own very soon. And at that point, our next breakpoint is 30 dev. And so we have been running this experiment where we really like deving this place up because it has 10 locations in it and it's pretty efficient because it applies it to all those locations. We're going to move our dev province and we're going to move it over here to this 6 dev province, or this place that only has 6 places to dev, and it has hills and it has forests. So it's going to be relatively slow going. However, we want 20 dev in these locations because everything that we do up here is going to come through here. These 2 locations, we want Padlock Canals, and we need 20 dev there in order to have Padlock Canals. And so we're going to move this guy over, and we are going to dev province instead over here in this province. But also, will be nice to be able to get a little bit of dev, or a little bit more dev in this location. 10 is not a breakpoint. We don't get anything for getting up to 10, so that is a bit unfortunate, but long term, we do eventually want to get up to 20 dev here. We are using our parliament every single time in this location, so this location will gain dev really quick, but we are moving through this location. This location is a lost cause, and then these 2 locations, and so in order to help out with the proximity, we will be doing that, and that will incidentally eventually lead to more dev in this market, especially because we have these 2 19s. They're going to get there themselves, and then, or the 3 19s, and then after that, no breakpoints for quite some time, 20 or 10 dev worth of time. For the record, here in this market, in the northern Madagascar market, we have demand for 1.2 cloth at this juncture. So we taste a tasteful, an artful little annexation on Afat. It's not really going to push the antagonism too high, except on Yemen. I think we're kind of okay perma-warring Yemen. Nobody else is really getting a whole lot of antag here. We're probably going to deck on Yemen as soon as our truce with them is up, and then we are going to kind of redistribute their territory in a way that maximizes kind of total provinces or complete provinces that are given to our subjects, because of course they use dev province. I think we're also going to maybe annex Shewa and this guy, just to re-release out new subjects, something like this, if we have extra Diplo floating. And the reason being is that these guys are a ton of provinces, and these like leaner, tighter kind of 2 province subjects, 1 province subjects are a lot more likely to be using a dev province. They haven't even gotten to it though yet, because a lot of them are promoting out the tribesmen. They are converting, they are culture converting, assimilating, and so this type of stuff. But we will give a lot of completed provinces over to Shewa, I think, because they have a lot of partials. We will maybe have on the kind of chopping block for annexation this guy relatively soon, and we can cede to him Sid here, and then I think that we have some locations here that already have urbanization. Looks like it doesn't, but some stuff, yeah, so some of this stuff that is going to be provinces that we already have cores on, we'll just feed him the individual locations, but this is going to kind of be the tip down here. If we want to keep him for a while longer though, we could look to just have them be relatively small and release a new subject. The problem is we have these 2 partial provinces here, so we'll probably be feeding Sid a couple locations from this, releasing a new subject in Adal, and then feeding them Haud. The other thing is Harar. We have to decide exactly how we want to handle this. We have for a while wanted to move up onto this location, a new market, so we could pay 800 gold several times to move Harar down, across, and over this way, which I think we might do because that's cheaper than paying the stab required to delete a market on top of creating a new market. But this scrum of 3 markets, we're not into that. So we generally have really bad harbor capacity in all our locations, so administration of shipyards is going to be pretty nice for us, especially because the proximity cost through port, in terms of our current reduction in a lot of spots, we'll just pick this up. In terms of our current reduction on a lot of these, the amount we're getting is like 50% or something in total. Let's find a place that's not benefiting from a river to kind of fully illustrate it. But we have this massive cost, and so getting a flat -2 on this cost before a percentage is down to 24 ends up being like a 1.6 more proximity, and a lot of our locations are benefiting from naval and moving through navy, and also the harbor capacity is going to effectively decrease this by 7.5% as well once it kind of kicks in, because the harbor capacity of all of our locations is going to go up. All of our urban locations, I think specifically, coastal urban locations. So that is going to be pretty nice. Also, our market stalls out a little. We are moving Kalafo, starting to move over, and we cannot move Kalafo, unfortunately, anywhere closer to what we want. I mean, we can move one location closer, but really we want to kind of at least move 2 locations closer to like this. So rather than just moving over one with the hope that we can do this, what we are doing is we are building an entry pot here with the hope that the additional from the entry pot, the additional market attraction is going to be enough to allow us to pull this location into the market, because Mogadishu is a little bit further from here, so this is only 2 locations away. In theory, if we have the same modifiers that Mogadishu has, we'll be able to move on over here eventually. But it is looking like we do have to pick urban areas, and so that means that maybe we have to urbanize this. Not too terribly thrilled, but this is where the market's going, and if it has to move to an urban location, we'll urbanize it. We have that location kind of nice and isolated already as being one where we were planning on putting our market center, because the market center is going to not need to move through its own rough terrain, so putting it on the rough terrain is going to be a little bit nice. And it's kind of in the middle of all this area and is relatively low market access. I think that we'll end up moving this one a little bit north or something like this, because we do have this dead zone up here, and we also have a dead zone up here to handle eventually. So we annexed Shewa, which owned 2 of these markets, so now we're going to be continuing to play the great game of musical markets as we try and shift on over the markets to more reasonable places. In particular, I think we want to take out Yemen, or at least from this area, so that we can grab this. But we kind of want to let Yemen finish this colony first, because otherwise we're going to have to colonize it. It looks like they're going at a pace of, okay, just kidding, zero pace, so we'll just take them out. The Supreme Court as a building represents one of the biggest power spikes that we can get. It does give the capital monthly dev growth. We also might move the capital and form a new nation, but I think it's maybe more interesting to stay as Kilwa. It also gives 5% proximity cost. I think it used to give 10%. Okay, it gives 5%. We will be getting that, and we will be getting some crown power, which will be very useful for us because we are below the 25% threshold, and of course, all of our trade income scales with crown power. So, still having a little bit of trouble leapfrogging the Kafalo market on over here to this location in Garbahara because it is more attractive than Mogadishu market. We can improve this, although it is starting to get a little bit expensive to be doing this. We can improve this just by building a road between the 2, and so this is what we're going to do, although we're going to start from this location. That way we don't utilize the queue here, but we will build ourselves a paved road this way, which is not going to be very useful for us for anything other than moving troops around, but it will allow us to avoid having to destroy a market and then create a new market. And so at a certain point the cost of the roads is cheaper than the stability cost, as well as like the other various the making a new market cost, which I believe is getting pretty pricey. It does scale with the size of your economy, unless I'm mistaken. And so if we were to try and create a new market here, it would cost us 6k. So spending a few thousand to move the market down in this way is, in theory, cheaper. So pretty big power spike for us is the unlocking of the law category, which gives us administrative principles. We went with the political principle, which is far and away the best thing, 5% prox cost. That will be really nice when that starts kicking in, and we might even be able to get our naval all the way over to Lower Pinda after that kind of comes in, or our naval propagation there. We do have marine presence all the way up to here, basically, or up to here. And then after that, it's this province, so we will have to start working that province. We also did a little bit of a thing here where this is our only town in this entire market, where we have this, and so we have made sure that we are building cannons and various other kind of one little pip of the things. That way stuff like our navy can repair here, because otherwise they won't be able to repair. And while we have these guys parked over here, we might go for a little bit of some cheeky maritime presence gain, because they did bring over the army to kind of work for this. And so we'll just take a look at the provinces, and then we will come on over and patrol there. Secondarily, we have, in terms of tech, what we are going for next. We have some really good options in confessionalism, really nice power spikes, where we can go for tax efficiency and also war score costs and not subject opinion. This cabinet seat is going to be useful for us. Rights of the clergy would also be, I think, somewhat useful. We do have a couple of additional options here, but what we're going to go for instead of all that is a power spike. We're going to go for Arquebus here, where we want to be able to fight Vigianagar because they're scary, and then we will go for the barracks. That way we can have more dudes. Going to be transitioning to a little bit more navy heavy, and then we will also pick up the cannons and the army morale, and if we get through all this, we will probably be kind of taking it to them. Once all that finishes, have this little cheeky war here where the main idea is we kind of want to steal these pops. Also been trying and figure out a way to increase the migration attraction kind of closer to the capital here in this location, because right now it has super dead migration attraction, and we don't have any penalties from unsupported building levels or anything like that, but like we saw a lot of pops migrating up here, this type of stuff, and the surplus of work modifier is really strong. And so this is something that's a little bit interesting, is if you overexpand the villages, you can pull a lot of migrants there, and that effectively is pulling migrants away from locations like this. But we're still gonna hope that we just like pip a really hard slave center raid, and that way we can upgrade this to a city, because we've wanted to have this as a city for some time now, but have just been kind of running into issues because the propagation goes through here, Poundlock Canal. We want it, especially as we start to get more of these proximity reduction modifiers, like the political principle, which still has to kick in here. You could see that we have the penalty from jungle. This is back in. It's a little bit unfortunate that this is effectively a bug, and we would be in better shape if this wasn't the case. Roads override it, but the new kind of system where proximity cost of going upstream along a river, how this now gives -30 instead of -10 for whatever reason when they put this in. This bricked the kind of free little discount from here, because otherwise, actually, the proximity discount percentage discount's really not going to do a whole lot in the face of the jungle modifier. That is so unfortunate, because if that jungle modifier weren't here, when this kicks in, this would be 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%, 40%, 41%. So we'd be getting like a 40% discount, right? And then, unfortunately, we have this in here. I think that if we had a 40% discount and we were instead getting a 25% discount on the road, it would be 15 minus the flat 40. We actually would have cheaper proximity here. If we just had the current level we do have of road, paved road, giving -25, and didn't have this jungle modifier. So going upstream is a little bit worse in some regards. So that is a little bit unfortunate. I'm assuming that's not as designed, but in either case, a 5% discount will still help us out and still make that at least a little bit cheaper. You can see here also a little bit what we're talking about. There is, in this location here, in terms of the terrain, there's a forest. So this should give proximity impact plus 25%, right? But when we go here, because this is not an upstream segment, and there's a road here, the forest doesn't count. And so in this instance, the discounts are really going to come to bear and be quite powerful because we have so many of them. We're going to get -40%, and instead of this 15% or 15 flat, we get 40 reduced by 25, so we're 15 flat, reduced by 41%, but plus 12%. This is actually cheaper than this segment over here, or it's the... it's basically the same price, despite this having an extra plateau segment. And so without the plateau segment, it would be cheaper, which is what we should be getting or should be paying here. But unfortunately, the jungle is applying. So with the roads, we managed to leapfrog the market over here, and now we can only go over to this location, but this is on the other side of Mogadishu, so I do think we will be making progress here. So it's like once a month we have to move it, and then wait for the tick to happen. That's fine. And then once the tick happens, now this is getting on the other side of Mogadishu, which is going to help. And so now we will relocate this market. I think every time we do this is really disruptive from the perspective of food. But now we will relocate it over here and just slowly ease on over. Which is a very kind of silly gameplay pattern here. We're just waiting for the month tick so that it will reset here. I guess we lose economic hegemon while this is happening because, you know, markets. And then we will be moving this market, relocate two more times. Oh, it's really not right there. Here, actually, have a little bit of a think because, okay, we could maybe build roads going inland. To get in here that are going to be useful anyways. In fact, it looks like we already have some roads queued up. I don't know where this road's coming from or going to exactly. I think that the best way we trace proximity through here is up to here anyways, so maybe road wouldn't be useful. I imagine we'll try building one road here and see if this... Oh, that road's already there. Alright, never mind. We will have to move it one more time to here. And then certainly this will... get in its market this location, and if not, we would want market access to this anyways, and so we're going to build a road. Oh, okay, we already have a road there, perfect. This Malindi should almost certainly, when the February ticks over, be able to do its... Oh no, propaganda has its downsides. Who would have thought? People don't like the propaganda. And there we go. We have now been able to move the market all the way over to its final resting place. Where it's going to die. I mean, where our economy is going to die. And so just need to wait for the month tick, and we will be able to see what the new market's going to shake out like. But this is cheaper than doing this. It was cheaper for us to do this than it was to delete the market on several fronts, both economically, just gold-wise, pure gold, and also it was cheaper from the perspective of not needing to take the stab hit. Kind of don't like the stab hit on this. This is going to be a market that has pretty good food access. It's going to have gold. And so it will be in relatively good shape, even has a little bit of iron. I don't think we have any cotton in the market. Yeah, this is just outside the market, but I believe that province is within the market. So the fish, we would be able to build textiles out of here, maybe. Not that there's a lot of dev to create demand for such things anyways. And then hopefully our big concern was, yeah, this, getting food squeezed on Kilwa. So, because we pulled a couple rice locations and some livestock locations out from under Kilwa. And so we will have to go about making sure that I think we're just going to expand out all the rice that we possibly can, especially considering the price is collapsed on this. We unfortunately have upgraded a lot of the rice. And then we're going to do sturdy grains and such too, and stuff like this. And so hopefully we'll be in good shape. We know we want to keep this place rural, so we'll do this. We can even pull slaves to that location because we are trading back and forth. And so hopefully with all of this, we should be able to right the ship on our kind of demand for food. Yeah, we actually have so much of this stuff going on. And so currently we have, I think, a lot of trades in Kilwa market and going back and forth with slaves. And the idea here is as they shuffle back and forth, we get slaves coming into Kilwa and out of Kilwa, and what it does is it pulls the slaves from the locations where the slaves arrive at when we do the slave raiding, and then it sends them out to places where they're needed in RGOs, places in other kind of nations, and then by shuffling back and forth, they don't just sit all in one location, kind of just doing nothing. And so I think we have Sofala market here. What we'll do is we'll cancel a little bit of a trade here, because I don't think we have trades coming in from the Sofala market into Kilwa. We'll cancel, let's see, 2. And then we'll start sending some slaves back to Kilwa, because we want more pops in Kilwa anyways. And so this will maybe help out, and maybe some of these new things will employ up. It's not profitable, but we don't really care. This will ship over some slaves, and the slaves will be able to work in these new food RGOs that are expanding. So we declare a religious war up in here, and in particular, the Benin area just has quite a lot of pops for being extraordinarily soft. I'm pretty sure we don't need to keep these army together. We can just split them up and divide and conquer, because I think we'll run through anything that we could come across, given the current state of affairs, looking at these guys' institutions. Well, he has a lot there, but everywhere else, well, actually, he kind of has, maybe he'll have some decent-sized armies. I kind of doubt it, though, and when we looked at the kind of the prediction in terms of this, I think that this is just a lot of conscripts, and so certainly 12k guys should be able to handle it. So, if we have a subject that has low prosperity and is not using Dev Province, this guy, I think, stopped using Dev Province. He was using it for a long while, got this place all the way up to 20, which is spectacular because it's gold, but he also has, like, basically unlimited unlimited inflation, so we can't even expand the gold in his kind of area anyways. If they are going to have low prosperity, then we might as well just annex them. Because they will not be getting much dev from their prosperity. Most of our subjects are released with our ideas and our stuff, and so they have higher prosperity. But we're seeing kind of some areas of low prosperity and low prosperity that we can kind of make use of, and so we are going to start annexation in these regions. We do have to improve relations with this guy. We wanted to go for the annexation on him. He also has gold, so there's 3 gold kind of right here, and additional gold out here on Lake Victoria, so that'll work decently. But this guy, not much kind of satisfaction, I think, is the main driver, because his culture, we kept culture flipping him. We culture flipped him off of his culture quite a few times, and so this means that you know, as far as development goes, well, he is using Dev Province, so we won't annex him. I think he was Dev Provincing both, yeah. And I think that once these guys, the guys who are Dev Provincing, get these places over level 20, then we just look to annex them all. And so our Sofala market will be really, really rich once stuff comes around, because this is quite a few pops, and if they're all in, you know, 20 plus dev, they will be demanding quite a lot of goods. And so more than happy to be a little bit patient on this if they are in that situation. But this is kind of how one of the ways in which we are choosing how to annex people now, is we take a look, because the thing is we can get everywhere up to 100% dev, and so this means we would be getting the full flat 0.4 prosperity gain. And so if this guy is going to be getting 0.25 instead, then he's only going to beat us if he's going to be using Dev Province, especially because we're getting the additional 0.1 from our school now. Maliki, and also urban dev grants. Does this guy not have urban dev grants? This guy doesn't have urban dev grants, so he's getting 7.5-ish flat, and here, us, without using any sort of dev province, is getting 0.6, so still a little bit more, but not absolutely insane, despite using dev province. And so we're starting to comb and, like, look around using this heuristic and try and find some spots where it makes sense for us to annex them, especially because subject loyalty is now starting to pinch us a little bit. Country strength of all vassals versus overlord starting to hurt. So we are concerned with areas because we are now using, or one of the concerns with areas is integrating locations. We are assimilating now in Kalahari with our colonizations, because it requires less than 50% of our pops in order to finish the colonization. You can see we only have 30% of primary culture. We have a lot of these places on cord, and we've already cored all of Karoo, and these places will be very quick to core despite us having really big penalties from lack of control, because we have enough positive modifiers that we could still be pretty positive in terms of how quickly we can integrate. And so we are starting to integrate over all these low pop areas we have colonized. They're not worth a whole lot, but more control will be nice, and they're starting to pop up a little bit in terms of population here, and so eventually they will be you know, contributing to the overall economy. Not currently too much. If we take a look at the market size is, there are 300,000 pops here, market value of 110. For comparison, Sofala market, which is kind of one of our bigger ones, has over 1 million pops, market value of 1,600. The dev is, by the way, not all that high, not anywhere close to 20s, but these places are growing way faster than some of our other locations. It's growing by close to 0.01. Here, there's no negative modifiers, and we are being pretty particular about making sure we get the roads and the rural markets in all these locations. You can see the roads are currently in production. And just as like a little bit of point of comparison, because I don't think we've done this too much, we are deving up where like Europe is not. Like 0.0017. So this is like, we're getting dev 4 times as fast there. In some of their better locations, which have positive modifiers, farmlands, this type of stuff, they're getting around half. And so we are, or have been for the entirety of the game, catching up, even though we're not really highlighting it that much. Some places are really out in front because they're OPMs, and they will be using they will be hosting their parliament there a whole lot. But we are catching up to the point where eventually we would be a kind of development hub. You can see here 50s and 60s. A lot is going to Alexandria. They in fact are gaining at a really nice clip because the farmlands, the river, the coastal, they are using urban development grants. They also have decent prosperity. This is one of their flavor little bits of a bonus. They do have a tech that is pretty nice, of the Masters of the Nile 0.01. Castile, who we looked at, also has a tech that is going to help them out in age 1.01 or 0.1. And so this is kind of their situation, but we have been just at max prosperity basically this entire time because we have stacked every little bit possible. We have pushed free subjects, and then we also have base value for every location and very little satisfaction issues. We have just generally very, very satisfied pops, and this is a reason for us to avoid taxing the general pops a little bit, because most of these guys are peasants, right? And so if their satisfaction is a little bit higher, their prosperity kind of a threshold will be a little bit higher. We still have a lot of wiggle room per our leader, but if once our leader dies, because our leader is giving us a 0.1 prosperity as well, if once our leader dies, it could make sense for us to peel back a little bit on the commoners tax, just for the pure purpose of keeping that at 100% rather than 99%, but seeing that it's at 99%, maybe this is a little bit of a splitting of hairs here. So we have started to use a little bit of an exploit, which is if you randomly choose here, what will happen is it will randomly make either a vassal, it'll make a new character to serve as leader, if I recall correctly, if it picks vassal, but it'll randomly choose between vassal or fiefdom. We cannot normally make fiefdoms, but this is why we are starting to get some fiefdoms, in our managed subjects. If we take a look at our subject types, hey, we have a few fiefdoms, and we didn't subjugate these or transfer these as fiefdoms. These are newly created fiefdoms like Oromia. And so this is a curious little thing, which is going to help us out quite a bit, because we want to have as many subjects as possible, especially in areas where we have stuff like this, where we can't really get control here. But in here, if we can get the thing to operate correctly, we have gold, and so we would prefer a dev province to occur here. The AI is very likely to use it. They do seem to have a preference for doing it when the RGO is really good, or the RGOs are really good, and this is kind of on the exterior of where we can actually project any type of control. We're still thinking about putting a market here, but I was thinking about it a little bit more, and the more that we kind of play and the more that we do some trades and this type of stuff, the more painful these interior markets feel, largely because we have such a fat malus to the modifier here from this trade range used over land. And if we take a look in the ledger, we could take a look at our modifier and see that we have minus 40% or plus 40% cost, and overseas we have minus 30% cost. And so that makes it so that if we are trading with, like, here to, let's say, a different market, if we cancel a trade real quick, we can take a look. It doesn't really matter what trade we cancel, because we're just going to let the automation come in. And we look to import books from somewhere. If we look to import books from, like, the Loango market, we won't directly go there, even though we are actually adjacent to that market. Instead, we'll go through the Kilwa market and all the way around. It's a little bit curious that we actually can touch this market. We weren't able to do that before when we were kind of showing this off, but these markets really can't trade with much other than the adjacent coastal markets very well. So they are basically, like, even the Sofala market, you're adjacent, but you're pushing through Kilwa. So while these markets that are kind of landlocked can support stuff like the Kilwa market, when we trade with them, they're really not moving too much goods other than to the Kilwa market. And if we take a look, we could see what trades we're going with. A lot of these are relatively close. A little bit looks like a lot of imports too, because we don't produce a lot of these goods, and exporting ivory and the like. We actually would like a lot more trade there, and we would like them to just push out their lumber. But what we might end up doing is, as we start to get actually some development, because we are dev provincing this, we will be able to build up these urban areas a little bit better, and we will be able to push stuff specifically that has paper as its inputs, or sorry, lumber as its inputs, extraordinarily well out of this market, because the lumber is really, really cheap. And so that's why the profits on some of these are so good, is because the lumber is basically free. And so I think we're going to try and push paper, and we're going to try and push carpentry, but the paper goes into books, and books aren't really demanded by our pops because it's an over 30 dev thing, and we've been trying to push up demand of this type of thing, but it doesn't feel very good. I'm not sure exactly actually how carpentry is worked, or its furniture in the carpenter, but I do believe that demand is going to be scaled. Yeah, so the demand for this is relatively flat, right? The nobles like it, the clerics, the burghers will also consume some of it. You notice the soldiers will consume quite a bit less. The tribesmen will consume a little bit. So maybe we can try and push furniture a little bit more. In particular, I don't believe it's this age. I believe it's next age. We would get access to lacquerware and some of these other things that consume wood, a whole lot of wood. I think porcelain consumes clay and coal. But clay and coal, the inputs for them, you use rural buildings to create these. And so we would be able to do porcelain relatively well within that market, to try and make use out of it. But the really big one would be the lacquerware. I'm not sure where it is on the tech tree here. There it is. And lacquerware in particular does consume a lot of wood. Look at that, 2 wood. And so this would be something that we could do reasonably well and then look to ship, because if I recall correctly, it's either lacquerware, porcelain, or both. They do have a cheaper cost to trade the good. It is not lacquerware, but lacquerware, base price of 5 is pretty high, and then porcelain I think has a base price of 3, but for the purposes of trading it, it is going to be half the weight. So shipping it out even from that interior market might be something that's possible, but still, it's going to be, this feels like more of a support market. This feels like more of a support market. Considered making a market here, but that would pull a ton of locations that have a ton of gold, iron, the like, places where we could do really good manufacturing. It would pull it out of the Safala market and put it in a place where it can't really do trades that well because it's not on the coast, and that's kind of what we need in order to trade, because we don't have this land trade modifier. Instead, we have this ocean trade modifier, and we're even syncing our government reform into having this modifier, which it allows you to go easier overseas. Certainly not over land, certainly not in loud car outside, but it is allowing us to do these trades a little bit better. I think we also need a little bit more trade range, and that things might feel a little bit better after that. And so we're going to come into the tech tree and go for some trade range as well in the Age of Reformation here. I think we're going to, because it's right here, we're going to also upgrade our Lancers to Heavy Lancers. That won't be too big a cost for us, I think, but there is some trade range in the tree over here. Off to the left, I believe, we have some maritime presence, maritime trade advantage, and you know what? Actually, we have so much wood. Maybe Furniture Workshop actually makes sense, because we actually have a lot of demand for these things, because this is one of the few things we can create demand for. Yeah, we have 8 demand. I mean, this is more than the demand that we have for fine cloth. Fine cloth has double the base price. Normally, fine cloth is the thing you rush. Even this doesn't look that good, that high of demand, though. That is a bit unfortunate. So I think we're going to go for the trade range, but furniture would be something that we would probably skip maybe in this age, but we won't be skipping it. I think that the trade range is all the way down here, and we will be happy to get the trade maintenance and then the percentage trade range, and also the Diplo range will be nice in here. And we can get bigger markets with the customs house as well, but I think that this is going to be kind of the next little salvo of things we go for. The dyes workshop, also something that uses wood as an input, also something that we're probably going to be a bit interested in, but it feeds into the cloth and we don't produce that much fine cloth, so I really do wish we got to pick it, but it is also important to note that we have origins for colonial charters. We have multiple colonies kind of coming on out, and this also gives a little bit of dev. It was really nice when you can pick it, but we're not able to pick the location we're going in. This is our current colonies. We're doing these little ingresses so that we could get the maximum amount of surface area possible per mission for the smallest amount of colonization. So you can see this is low pop area, and it's going to allow us to get a lot of surface area so we can get a lot of conversion in. We are trying to completely swallow up the coastline before the Europeans arrive. That way we will completely brick any sort of progress towards Asia, and we are colonizing in some other places in the Americas, getting a couple colonies up and going. We are continuing to explore. Baracoa doing all this by themselves. We haven't given them any additional money of any kind, but they are making things kind of happen here. We have been sending slaves to this market. A little bit leery about sending slaves to this market because I think it's going to end up benefiting us less than it benefits, Sicily, or two Sicilies, who is the other colonizer here, unless we were to send slaves from a place where we know they're going to be all Christian slaves, but even then they would just arrive here and get freed, and so we could see that these guys are colonizing as well. We're looking to not just have these enormous colonial investment because we don't want to drain out our pops, but it is quite nice that some of these guys are starting to get going. These guys, our investment in terms of pops with them was relatively low. We invested maybe 3k pops. They're up to 47k. This is really nice. Part of this is slaves, part of this is the slaves growing and just the general population growth. You can see they're up to 5.7k slaves, but if we take a look at their location and we take a look at what's going on with the pops, we can see population growth nearly 4%, absolutely exploding. So many things going on here that are going to help them out, and this is one of the really big benefits of slaves and being able to push slaves, is you push slaves into a place where the population growth is 3-4%, and it's only temporarily going to be that because you see, or you don't see rather, the new colonial nation modifier, which is going to give an enormous amount of population growth. This fades away, so this is why you want to get the slaves there ASAP. It is a timely type of thing, and I think that they're probably expanding out the trade, and we probably have more trades. Wait, didn't we? I could have sworn we had dedicated all of our kind of imports to slaves. You know what? Maybe it's because we got embargoed, but we were importing from specifically Benin, because this was one of the better markets to be importing from, and so we will continue to import slaves there because while they can go to these locations, they're more likely to go to ours, and we can actually facilitate that a little bit more if we expand out the RGOs a little bit. This will create the vacancies for the slaves, and will give our pops a lot of money, and eventually once they get their actual trade up and going, they will be able to get quite a lot of value. We can even facilitate that and get them kind of started a little bit. We put down market villages in a lot of these locations, but it looks like we might have to do that a little again, and this will give them trade, and their trades will be very lucrative, and we will get 30% of their trades, so it's like us getting 30% of the market village, but this is going to allow them to kind of pop off in regards to the development as well, which they do receive bonuses for, and so ideally they would create demand sometime down the line in 100 years where we could ship them goods, but I don't think we're going to get that deep, but this would be a thing that would be useful, and they get a bonus to dev as well here, by virtue of being a colony. They get this colonial heritage 0.05, which is absolutely massive for the dev, and so overcoming this dev penalty is going to help them out a whole ton. So to the extent that we've been able to bring up Kilwa, if you start a colonial nation, you can do that doubly, and I do think we have already built up a little bit of stuff here, and I think we've even built some roads on some key RGOs in a couple of these places. I could have sworn we had built a road between these two, between the gold and this. Looks like we had a gravel road. Yeah, so there's a gravel road in the queue here between these two. The idea being we would really like additional development on gold. That would be quite useful, and so we could even expand out just a little bit gold for them, which will help them out. But we did put down these markets, villages everywhere, and also these settlements everywhere, although the AI likes to close these, and we kind of recognize that this is the case. This guy is not closing them, which is fantastic, which is going to of course contribute to enormous levels of population growth, over 3% here, and I think this colony is one of our older colonies. Yeah, you can see that the colonial nation modifier, new colonial nation modifier, has gone down from, it starts at 1%, it's down to 0.46%, but the settlement here is helping out, only at half of its rate though, because it doesn't have proper kind of goods. This is one of the tedious things about having colonies, is they are not very good at solving issues that they have, and so we could come in here and add for these guys. We can't add sheep for them, but we could export sheep stuff to them. I think that we have a little bit in this market, and so we could just do something like this, come back to here, do wool, and export it. You see we have a little bit of a surplus. This mark is relatively close, and this would help to solve the issues with the settlements. We also here have an enormous amount of settlements still, and this is something we're kind of waiting on in terms of urbanization. We don't want to urbanize a place that has a settlement because it bricks the settlement, and this is one of the reasons why our population's been able to grow in the way that it has. So the preparations for our power spike are continuing. We have gotten to the point where we will be military hedge after next tick, because we have recruited so many guys. We are drilling our guys, which we haven't really been doing beforehand very often because it is expensive. You can see we're not really making too much money. We have added to both the regiments. We are adding a whole bunch of arquebusiers. Also, someone pointed out to me that you can get the lower upgrade version of the unit and then upgrade it for much cheaper than you can just building the new unit. So we upgraded some archers into these, reinforcing these stacks so they will be really overstacked and each able to do a whole lot of damage and sustain kind of reinforcement rather than these two needing to fight together, because last war we only had a single major stack. And so what we are waiting on now is just the research of heavy lancers, and then we should have a easy enough time rolling through Vigianagar, which is what we have been prepping. The predictor doesn't like the fight for us, but I think that it's probably just wrong because the levies will get chewed through unless this guy has researched levies from this age, which I think is actually maybe he has. He does have all the institutions. That'll be a bit of a bummer if we have equal tech and we just deck into him. Also very nice parliament for us because we are going to pick up over 50 outward here, which is, okay, it's going to help us with colonizing faster, but also it's going to allow us to roll outward events, the 50 plus outward events, which previously we have been ineligible for. We're probably also going to do this deal with the local assembly complaints, which is, oh, these are the peasant ones, bummer. I was hoping that this was curbing the power of the burghers, because they do have a lot of buildings under their thumb, but okay, we might still click through on this. We don't really care that much about peasant power, though. That's not that big a concern for us, but it does brick employment and cost a building slot, and we have tons of satisfaction on these guys, and they will recover satisfaction anyways. So we can peel one off and see what's underneath, and we get Artisan Guild complaints. So this is actually kind of one of the funnier buildings, which is like maybe net positive. So maybe we won't even click through this, where production efficiency, kind of into it. Also, not that this is having in a lot of locations that we have high dev areas. A lot of this tends to be lower dev places where we will be getting this because it tends to be lower control. But this is also giving 50 potential burghers to be employed. So this is actually probably a good building, so we won't click to destroy him. So this will be the opening salvo of this war. He is starting to come onto one of our stacks here, and the battle is afoot, and it should be pretty bad for him. We have also prearranged our entire army so that all of our infantry is, or the center is almost entirely infantry / all infantry. The cavalry are on the flanks, and so if the flanks manage to clear out, we will do enormous flanking damage, and then the infantry being in the middle will get to benefit from their defensive bonus from having the flanks secured. They will have additional flanks secured, and so we should be able to take these battles, but it's actually looking like we're taking decent amounts of damage. Okay, their center is completely cleared out, but one of the problems is we don't have any cav to crash through the center. So I think that we probably want to avoid, because they're levy heavy, I think we probably want to avoid fighting on +2 tiles. I thought taking a defensive battle on a +2 would be reasonable or good for us, but it's looking like maybe did we lose that battle and start a new one? What happened here? I mean, our navy should... Oh, our navy is getting cracked here on the, yeah. Let's bring the navy over here so that they don't get cracked by these random guys coming on through. We were trying to add some more transports. Unfortunately, timing was not quite right in terms of when we declared the war. And looks like we're going to get clipped in a few spots, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is as well. Our navy overall is stronger, so why don't we actually just bring this navy temporarily back to Mogadishu, That way, we will not just kind of run it down. And also, it can repair up, and so that will be good. And also, most of our kind of opening salvo here, we've secured exactly what we want here, which is a kind of path to our subject in here, where we can reinforce from, and also the war goal, which is sitting right here, and so we will be sitting pretty. This guy, we are almost certainly going to assault. 250, not good enough to resist our increased amount of infantry we have. We will refill the fort, and then they will be ticking down. We will probably continue to push in, and also, very importantly, we're taking slaves. We don't have the pop-ups set up to pop up, but we are taking slaves every single time we take some land, and so this is going to be really, really valuable for us. Looks like they have some guys kind of cruising around. Also, just wanted to point out just how monstrously strong our subject is, because some of these, not all of these, some of these they actually have employed with slaves, and this is just crazy. Production efficiency, 263%, absolutely insane. From the cotton plantation itself, it is outputting 78 cotton. The cotton here is putting out an extra ton of cotton, extra 230, so this location itself is putting out, like, from here, from the cotton itself, I think the number of RGOs, does it tell us the number of RGOs that are getting put out here? I don't think that it does, but it's putting out like 40-ish RGOs, and then this here is putting out 78 RGOs, so like 128 cotton off of this. And so the amount of cotton that's being produced here is 300. Absolutely insane. Yeah, you can see 120 just from that one location. Almost half of this entire market worth of cotton that has multiple cotton locations is coming from our one place in our subject that is running the plantations. Unfortunately, they just decide not to employ the plantations in the other locations, but what can you do? It is what it is. So this is still a really rough war. We are trying to outmaneuver. We just had a battle here. They had like 150k troops, so we retreated back here because it wasn't looking so good. They're kind of single filing into us now, which is kind of nice. But now they have 130k. We got a chance to rearrange some of our troops a little bit. It looks like they are going to have difficulty with combat speed, kind of saturating the front on the right flank. So we're going to keep at this one, mainly because they just single filed and they're just all in reserves. They are having difficulty getting onto the front, whereas we are kind of doing okay getting onto the front. But noticing my understanding of how reinforcements are supposed to work, and maybe this is something that has changed, is if there is a unit that's not full strength and 50% strength, this opens up frontage to be reinforced, but these guys aren't reinforcing, so we might have to merge our armies together. That way we can properly saturate fronts, but as it stands, we're kind of getting in there at a decent clip, so I think that we win this, and yeah, it's looking like we're crashing through. The only issue is that we're really low on morale, but we do look like we're clearing out the fronts, and we're getting 10-1, so even if we lose this battle, I still think it's worth us kind of pushing a bunch of casualties onto them, and yeah, this is starting to look bad for them, like real bad, 60-1, and okay, they take a loss, they take another loss, and we have a ton of troops that we have captured here. Still, it's not very straightforward to try and maneuver around, because these areas with kind of like narrow flankage is going to be difficult, or low frontage. We also don't have enough food to support all these guys, so we will ransom out a bunch of prisoners, but this is quite the slog. You know what? We don't have any antagonism here. I think we're actually just going to sell these units into slavery. We freed up a whole bunch, but we don't really want them getting their units back, and so we're going to go with the sale into slavery. That doesn't seem too big a penalty for us, but also we have this looming over our heads. We're running out of manpower here. We only had about 50%. I thought that we would be able to carry the day with just having really a lot better units. And maybe we can, but it doesn't feel super straightforward, We'll take the month tick, and we will consider here, there's Diplo hedge. We're pretty close to getting all hedge here. We will try and go over here, because it turns out like this is the war goal. We thought it was this, and so reading is hard. But I'm thinking that we probably need to try and merc up, maybe. We have a ton of money, so maybe it's just, like, irresponsible not to merc up, and we could just sort by who can have the absolute biggest merc army. Probably want to go for someone with a decent amount of admin here. This guy's not too expensive to hire. I do think admin is one of the better stats, and then we just go for anything that is particularly close to our age, or our current age here, and so stuff like Lancers or Halberdiers, I think, are okay. It's looking like they don't have the current age of troop, which is good for us because that means that they haven't researched it. If they're on age 3 stuff, that's actually pretty good for us. If in the regions that we're hiring, it's seeming that we do have a tech advantage, which is why we're able to still be doing okay. We have 31k casualties to their 181k. The problem is they have a lot left behind, whereas we are running out of manpower. So we finally take the capital of Kandesh, which is this massive, of course, 10 location province, excluding the mountains, and there are so many pops here, which means we're going to be stealing a whole ton of pops. We do want to kind of stick in the war if we can, but this is kind of looming over our head. The fact that we have conscripted up, or we have hired 2 stacks of mercs, 2 full stacks of mercs. We're going to continue to hire them. This is just completely invaluable in this war. Not just the fact that this guy has given us this claim, which is the basis on which we declared this war, but us being able to reinforce and merc out of this location has just been so useful. So we're probably going to hire another merc out of this location, split it between our 2 armies, and then go deal with this guy, something like this, with this stack, as this guy looks to assault this fort, which I think may full occupy this subject of Vijayanagara. Not entirely sure, because of course we have the fog of war here. So we haven't even finished occupying that land, but this is indicative of a kind of one of the instances of our enslaving here. We can see the Marathi pops. 10,000 pops were moved from one of these massive ones, which is going to allow us to upgrade to city, which is going to give us more of these higher tier pops, more of their kind of potentials, and so we are going to do this. We're going to jump on this immediately as well because of how the colonization is working. It is pulling pops from the province. We are continuing to try and increase migration here, but really what we're going to need is we're going to need the eventual just pipping of slavery or an enslavement where 10k pops move here. Then we can upgrade it to a city. Once it's a city, we will have more max building level. With the additional max building level, we can have more pop potentials, and we can kind of be in a little bit of a better shape. You could see that this has 127 because we get plus 100 from city. We only get plus 25 from town, and so it's a really catch-22 because these places are easy to keep in high pops once they get to being a city, but before they're a city, it is a big trouble, or it is a little bit difficult. You can see that this location is over 20 dev, this one's not, but that's kind of okay. Another thing that we could do, I think that's pretty marginal, so we're not pushing it very aggressively, but potential burgers do appear in market villages, so in theory, market villages, if we are going to build extra of them, which we're not looking to do because we have tons of them, we would want to put them in places where there is 20 dev, because the burgers that are here will be demanding additional, they will be demanding for themselves, they will need fine cloth, which is contingent on them being over 20 dev. So this is going to create that demand, whereas if we were to put, a market village here, it would not create that demand. So something we're noticing here that we didn't notice before is, and it makes sense that it's happening, a bunch of slaves are dying from disease, which is not ideal because we want these guys to raise our pop. So what we are going to do is, ideally in every place where we have a slave center, although we might not be so precise, we're going to build hospitals. We're going to build hospitals for these slaves, and then also we do have further infrastructure buildings that we can build in the coastal, this one. Which is also going to give disease resistance. So we're going to put that down. We're going to put it down here as well. We're going to put the hospitals down there because we know that we've expanded out kind of the slaving in these locations. And also, these buildings are ones we were considering pushing anyways because they give potential clerics. And the potential clerics do consume additional goods, and they create demand for books. They can create demand for fiber crops as well, which we can create out of lumber. We have tons of lumber. And they create demand for medicaments, which is dirt cheap. cheap and not really being used at that higher rate. Hospitals are a little bit more concerning because they are consuming mercury, and we don't really produce mercury, but that is going to be what it is. And so I think that we're going to push, let's just mass build all the hospitals we can and mass build all of these that we can. Actually, we're not going to mass build these because we have so many coastal locations. A lot of them don't have slave centers. I think like Mogadishu does, but we won't look to put these everywhere unless we know that they have slave centers, other than the capital province, which we know has a lot of slave centers, and we kind of want to preserve the pops more in these locations anyways, but hopefully this relieves the slaves from the burden of dying so that they can continue to be enslaved. Alright, after a very long slog, we finally get what we want, which is we have to take the province that is the primary war goal and the market capital here. So we will take this. The peace deal has been kind of eluding us, and we also have a ticking spot, and we are kind of out of money for mercs. We hired mercs several times. We're out of manpower. We can't really do too much more, and so this is going to be ours right here, which is going to give us almost certainly control of the trade here. We can see that we do have the most trade advantage. We are also going to gain some trade capacity, but not just the trade capacity that we have. Also, I think that we should have more than this. It's just got to initialize. Not just the trade capacity we have, but also we get priority first kind of pick of all the trades that are going to happen in this market. And so we could just take a look at the trades, or let's not even take a look at local trades. All of these trades that are specifically sending goods out, we will be able to override with our own and do ones that are a little bit better. We will get this guy, make sure that he's black flagged kind of the way we want him to be black flagged, and not accidentally march over our own territory and march him all the way back home. And so that has been the war. It has been lucrative. The slaves dying so fast to disease was not something I had anticipated or really observed. Really, we have been taking a lot of slaves this entire time, and my thought was that some of them were promoting, but also taking a look at, because promotion used to work, but it appears that promotion for slaves is also broken. We even changed our laws to allow promotion, which is going to push us more towards spiritualist to allow the slaves promotion. I forget exactly what category this law is in, but they are not promoting, which is a bit unfortunate because we have a lot of unemployed slaves. We want them to promote, we want them to convert to our culture, and we want them to not die of disease so much, but we did allow conversion of slaves. The unemployed slaves are supposed to promote, and it's not happening properly. Now, we want it either way because we are trying to push spiritualist, but that is a bit unfortunate, along with just how fast they die, because we had a ton of slaves here. It's not the case that they all just got traded away. Some of them just did get traded around. We have more slaves here than we did before, this type of stuff, and they got moved to higher priority areas, but that is a little bit unfortunate. But during that time period, we did manage to bink 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of upgrades to city that we would not have otherwise been able to do, which is going to give us more pop potentials. 3 of these in the back line are not on a kind of a higher dev location, but we do get at least, I think there was 2 here, but at the very least this one, I think this one as well was gained. Really, this is the location we have been wanting to upgrade for forever, and it is eluding us. And I think we also upgraded this, but it already finished, and so this is where a lot of slaves have gone. In fact, we could even look by culture. Marathi is going to be the one where we have taken, I think, the most slaves from, and you can kind of see where the ways in which they have been distributed over the course of this. And so quite a few finding their way over here, which of course finding their way over here is a nice euphemism, but they are increasing the population in these locations. Population is much, much higher here, and with these population being higher in this location, ooh, a little bit of migration. With that population being higher in these locations, this means that the percentage pop potentials is increasing more and more. We do still have to promote up these pops, and we have been a little bit aggressive about adding buildings, and so we do have like empty promotions. Something we could do is we could use encourage urbanization as the cabinet action, and maybe that would be a little bit better than trying to continue to encourage migration. And so perhaps we could do that. Perhaps we don't even have that. We don't even have that one. Okay, well, then I guess we can't do it. But encouraging the promotions, 5xing the promotions, would help out quite a lot. I think that we already have universities here and schools here, but these things create demand for books. It's definitely something we'd be interested in, and it also is going to allow the promotions. And so if we could do it, we would want to. But it looks like, yeah, it looks like we kind of already have that going on. We also will add some universities in kind of the home area, because I do think that these are, yeah, over 20, and so they are going to give potential clergymen, but also they will help accelerate this promotion process, keeping the pops from being peasants in this location, which is going to prevent this location from being used to fuel our colonization, which unfortunately is really kind of crushing a lot of our pops. We have a little bit of a thought about this market as well. This is the market capital here. I think that we'll delete the slave center, because we don't really need more slaves here, but I was thinking that, I think we need at least one slave center in this market. We have, I think, one here and here, though. Yeah, because we wanted to get more pops there, because we want to upgrade them to city eventually so that we can build padlock canals. But if we move this market to the left, we could maybe give Kilwa a little bit more breathing space, and also give Kilwa more pops. There's quite a lot of pops in these locations that are accepted cultures, and if we have these pops kind of shifted over into Kilwa, then we won't be so pressured, and maybe we can get this one to finally upgrade. So we have been doing everything we possibly can to relocate this market to one of two locations. Either to the left, over here, or to the right, over here. A little bit unfortunate we have not been able to relocate it properly, but now I think we can. Or now we can, because we are going to be leapfrogging it over using multiple cities. We had built this, we upgraded this to urban purely so that we could move this over. This is going to increase market access dramatically, and also kind of stop our subject from using this weird Axum pocket, which we're not a fan of. The other place where we wanted a market was over here, but we haven't managed to kind of get access from here over to here. We're going to need another location, but we have urbanized this, so we will at the same time, because it'll be fun to see them both go at once, be relocating this market over here. And also because we don't want any funny business. Can we not relocate the market? No, wait. Hold the phone. There we go. Oh, no, we can't. No valid locations available. Really? It's just out of range. We need this location to be better connected somehow. And I think we've built all the roads we possibly can. There's already a paved road there. We really wanted this. Oh, you know what? Once we move this market, this one will be able to go. I think the slack will get picked up. Perfect. And so that'll work. Our annexation on this little guy over here is complete. We get a bunch of cores. Or this little guy. I think that was Mogadishu. That big guy. Mogadishu was not doing a very good job deving up anyways. We had subjugated Mogadishu. We had not released them, so they didn't have all of our prosperity stuff. Should have had a little bit of a closer eye on that, and should have annexed them forever ago. But with that in place, this actually kind of looks like an okay location for a market. Is this okay? Let's take a look at the pops. Maybe this is kind of like in the middle of all the pops, and we kind of like it, and it's kind of okay. We knew that Mogadishu, this region, is like kind of not so good for market, just generally, because there's like not that much going on there other than the saffron. It's desert, it's sparse. But we were thinking of moving this on over to the coast, but I think Adon actually gets decent access there, 75%. Yeah, maybe this is actually just the spot, or roughly speaking the spot. We want it maybe in this region rather than somewhere else, and on this hill probably seems like pretty good, because it will be able to push access kind of to this open grassland pretty well. There's a lot of pops there. Yeah, maybe we don't need to move it now that we've seen where Fashoda is, and then Fashoda picks up some of the locations here that were in silly places that we're kind of skipping over the market, because we don't own the Soba market, we own the Axum market, and so our subject here was trying to join the Axum market instead of the more reasonable Soba market. Really wish you could give your subjects prioritization in that regard, so that they just use each other's markets rather than your market, because very often they do stuff like this, where they're like, hey, I have no access, I'm going to make a market. He was in the Axum market, couldn't access the Soba market, and so he's like, okay, I'm going to make my own, and it's a little bit annoying when they do it. The Fashoda market is actually not the final resting place here, though. We want to relocate once more over to Nuba. This is a location that is part of a province. We are just going to hold on to this just kind of temporarily because we do want to release this as a subject because they have a whole lot of gold and we want them to dev it up properly. This will be 2 provinces of gold, 1 of iron. It's going to be a really strong province, and so do want them to be... Is that Welga colonizing? No, he's not colonizing. I thought for a second he was colonizing, but that is going to be good. This guy will get annexed pretty quick here as well, or pretty soon. And so once this guy is annexed, we will be able to clean up a lot of the borders over here, including giving this away to someone else, like Mora, for example, can just take the rest of the province that they have, because we're not going to be using it. We gave them a city. Maybe this is going to be a new subject, or we could probably hand this off to Dankali, and then that will be nice for them as well, and then we will just hold on to the market here, or roughly speaking around here. I'm not sure if this is the exact location, but you know, I think this is actually probably pretty good. So we kind of annexed this region in here in sort of an accelerated way, which is bad from the perspective of tribesmen who, of course, are negatively affecting proximity. You could see, yikes, plus 26% proximity cost, and okay, we could still kind of get through it, but this segment costs 43. That's kind of an insane amount. But something that is going to be helping us out with that is modifiers that we have for pop promotion, one of which is free subjects is really nice. Also, average literacy of peasants, and so just wanted to kind of emphasize a little bit more that guys who are giving us this modifier here, the monthly literacy increase, is actually pretty nice because they are allowing us to get literate pretty quickly here in this newly conquered territory. You could see, or newly assimilated territory, you can see our overall kind of literacy vibe is pretty good, and here it is coming on up at a decent clip, and in particular the workers, or sorry, the peasants are going to, in this location, give us a pop promotion speed. We didn't have a lot of peasants here. It looks like, I don't see any peasants here, the Luba peasants up here with the 15% here. I'm guessing it averages all the peasants, but as these guys get more and more literate, we'll get more pop promotion speed, and so we should hopefully be able to promote the tribesmen faster than their population is growing, and so slowly kind of diminish the amount of pops that are going to be here. Oh, we see some liberation from slavery occurring too. Perfect. This is exactly what we wanted. So we see the slaves decreasing, they get liberated as they convert, and you can see that these guys are Sunni slaves. They decided to accept God into their hearts, and so as these guys get converted, they will become eligible for us to assimilate them as well, which is going to be really nice because assimilation doesn't happen super fast, but when there's you're almost always already monopop anyways, you will be kind of good at assimilating, and so this will be nice. It will allow us to acquire more pops that can be more usefully employed than just in the RGOs, and so it does work. It's just like, it seems inconsistent then, exactly how this is working. Yeah, we see a bunch of slaves promoting up in here. I wonder what exactly are the requirements that drive the slave promotion, you know, kind of in these locations. Is it just the presence of tribesmen allow it? Nope, these guys are promoting without the presence of tribesmen. Alright then. Alright, so I do kind of like the location of the Magosas market, just in the abstract. I think I'd probably like it if it was over like 1 or 2 tiles, but that is in the middle of one of our subjects, and we don't want to give the market to our subject because then all of our other subjects will get attracted to random markets that'll be nonsense. So we are going to be moving the Magosas market, a little bit of an experimental relocate. We're going to be relocating it to here, which, okay, it's going to have very few locations in it, but a lot of them will get returned to Kilwa, and also this place here. And also, I think that actually kills the dead zone up here. I don't think that there's there's no zero access places. And so this actually might be a reasonable spot for a market with kind of the belief that we want every single market that we have touching the coast, which every single market we have touches the coast, and this is just a concession to the fact that that is impossible to achieve, and so we have this movement over here. But with that, we will have way more pops in this market. We should have taken a look at how much pop was in the Kilwa market before we moved it. I think it was, I think we've gained like 300,000 pop plus, and we're going to have a lot more locations in the market. And now, this place will actually be able to pull a decent amount of pops, I think, given that we have so many high pop locations with low market attraction or low pop attraction, that we should be able to pull at a decent clip pops into here. And so I think we can see our change that occurred over the course of kind of just the day or the month tick. I forget exactly where they put it in the UI, but our pop did tick up from 28 something to 29, and so I do think that this is largely the result of the migration coming in. And if we take a look, it's a bunch of ones, but I do think more is migrating in the aggregate, and it's a bunch of ones from a bunch of different locations. So I think we are probably going to get our city that we have been so desperately wanting for so long. Alright, so we have been unsuccessful, and the pop is coming back down because it is getting pulled from for colonization. This is kind of a little bit cute. We've gotten the source origin of our colonial charter just repeatedly, like nonstop, and this is actually pushing up the dev of the location quite high, and so it actually is approaching 30. We binked a little bit of a 30 over here, which is nice as well. Pops are going to start demanding books, and the thing is my understanding is it's choosing this location because it has the most peasants, or it has a really high amount of peasants, and so we were kind of being stubborn, just trying to pull the migration edict through, and we could just wait for the slavery to take a hold and us eventually to like pip a 5k drop into here and upgrade it. But what we're going to do is we're going to expand these fiber crop buildings with the intention of deleting them later. And the reason for this is going to give each of these fiber crop levels is going to give 1,000 labor potential jobs. The peasants will promote to laborers, they won't be peasants anymore, and so they won't be eligible, and so the colonies won't pull them. We kind of tried to do this a little bit to some extent with the barracks, but we just need to be doing this a little bit more. We're going to add, I think, 4 here, just enough so that we don't brick our migration attraction here. That way, hopefully we don't break it, because the migration attraction will go down if we go over this. It will go down really significantly, and so we are going to put these in. We can actually even probably delete this. That's fine. And so that is going to handle that, but we're not going to be seeing the outcome of that because that'll take quite a while. We have finished our incorporation of all of these places, and just take a look. That is Karoo, Kalahari, Oka, Vango, and Nambi, and I think that this one we did last episode, but the cores are coming in, and it's important to kind of maybe emphasize that these are the cores of places that we colonized very, very quickly. Also very cool to see, like, all this migration coming through, too, to get these places pretty well populated. The settlements are pulling the pops laterally, and so we will have a lot of available pops moving to places where there's higher pop growth levels. And okay, eventually this will brick the settlement, but even without the settlement, there's still a bunch of abundant free land, so the pop growth is going to really be quite nice, and so the market will grow quite nice. I think that this place had like 200,000 or 300,000 pops. Now it has 400,000. You know, this has 900,000, this type of thing. We will continue to try and colonize areas, complete entire areas, that have relatively low pop colonizations, although we are kind of running out of spots. That way we can look to use assimilate area to get these places cored and also make use of the settlements. And so doing this, we won't need to use subjects as much, whereas kind of the higher pop locations kind of up here, we are going to lean more into subjects in order to get these places going, because they have more pops and because they won't turn off the settlements, which means that we need to do the settlements ourselves when we're doing settlements. And so this will be kind of how we're going along. Also, we've had a ton of places come up to 20 dev, and so we've actually increased demand for fine cloth by quite a lot, just by virtue of these places coming up to 20 dev. I think that these were not present at the start of the episode. We urbanized a couple of these areas. We these two areas came up, this one came up, this one came up, a couple of locations or several locations in our subjects came up. We got the 20 stack here, 220 stacks here. In particular, the ruler of this area got architectural visionary, which is really nice, so they are absolutely hauling. We wanted to annex these guys because they were the highest income, but then we saw architectural visionary and we were like, hey, just kidding. This guy has got a 21 in here, and there is a 20 here as well. So the Safala market's actually starting to get a decent amount of fine cloth demand. We didn't kind of bookmark it before. Earlier on in the episode, we are still getting quite a bit in the Kilwa market. Some of this is, of course, as you can see, as a result of trade, and also some of the buildings that are present in the capital, this type of thing. I think Mogadishu is going to have the most, yeah, and this is the needs of the burghers, because this is got so much dev and so many pops in these areas. You can see that just like this huge clump is like all over 20 dev, and so really what we should do, I think we're going to stay in Kilwa, because I think that this is more interesting and this is what people want. But us moving over here and swapping to Somali and, making Somalia and doing the nation formation would probably be better here than trying to force the infrastructure here in Kilwa. But okay, we're trying to force it. And then over here, we did see that we had 1.2 something levels of fine cloth. And now we're up to 3.2. So we've been engaged in these types of efforts all over the place, to the extent that we have places with 20 dev. And things are coming along. And this is by virtue of us really increasing the amount of burghers that are available or that are in this kind of region. You can see that there are promotions still pending. There are constructions still pending. And we're really just kind of trying to push them up, even if they're not going to be that good. We kind of over-urbanized intentionally in these areas with the idea of creating demand with this, and we have several locations over 20 dev. We of course aren't deving there anymore, but things have come along quite nicely here in order to kind of fill that demand. And so we have been playing around trying to make the weaknesses of Kilwa still compensate, still work, just like a brief comparison of what we have over here in terms of the dev of these other countries. We are of course catching up, as we pointed out earlier in the episode, like especially to like Hungary and like these types of ones, unless they have a place where they've been spamming parliaments, where there's been a little bit of a subject. We actually are in good shape relative to some of these countries. Wow, Egypt is just Egypt with the prosperity changes, like really AI Egypt is really going to benefit, because the AI is kind of bad at pushing prosperity, so they are going to have quite a bit of niceness from that. But that has been kind of what we've been doing internally. Externally, we did fight the big bad wolf of Vijayanagara, a huge slog, just absolutely. Oh, we should have shown the casualties towards the end of it, but it was like 10-1 and we killed like 500,000 pops and lost 50,000. And I mean, a lot of the slaves we took just died, which is a little bit unfortunate, but our pops did come up and stay coming up in the war, even though we were losing quite a few pops. We have even, I think, a decent chunk of Marathi pops. If we take a look at this, I think we have a little bit under 1%, something like this, in here. Maybe, okay, Gujarati, we have a 0.35. We probably have around 1% of our pop is now Indian, something like this. I don't think that they're reaching kind of the upper rungs here with what we had taken, but also the disease resistance thing is interesting. Hopefully next time around, or next time we're pulling slaves, that disease resistance buildings are useful. That'll be kind of like an interesting thing to tell, in which case we want more slave centers on the coast, so that they could come there, get their disease resistance, promote up this type of thing, etc. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you've been sitting a long time, feel free to get up, get a drink of water, take a walk, this type of thing. We might record one more episode, again, mainly because I'm receiving so much feedback that you guys really like this run. I think in theory, probably from a views perspective, it's better to just start new runs just in general and not make these deep runs because they take a while to record. But I think we have still some power spikes that will be coming up. We haven't really gotten to see some of the effects of us getting additional trade range. We do have additional trade range. We also are discovering markets elsewhere. where we can just take a look and we can see some of the trades that are going in these markets, and they are like decent trades for us that are happening in terms of value. So us discovering new markets is pretty valuable, and we are also are trying or starting to get some of the trades going on with the New World, where we are getting value out from there as well. We are just canceling the trades, the local trades things, so that we can see all the trades that are happening, between Africa and here. This is reasonably close to some of the stuff we have going on, and we have developing markets just kind of moving forward with the way things are going. These places are approaching being useful. We have up to 12 dev in some of these locations, mainly because there's like 0 resistance from some of these malices, which is perhaps, we're like halfway to 20 almost, which is perhaps kind of good, strong indicator of just how bad some of this stuff is, because we're eating this tropical climate jungle. In some of these locations, we're eating tropical jungle and also like bad terrain. I think like this might be one of them, where this is tropical jungle and bad terrain. No, it's just mountains. All right, fair enough. But eating a lot of those really negative, nasty penalties. Oh wait, if we have a road there, it kills the jungle. Do we not have a road in this thing? We don't have roads on the singular islands because you can't make one, but yeah, a lot of this as well. Anyways, we already did the outro thing, so other than that, have a good one. Bye-bye now.